China is facing some big challenges right now. A real estate crisis, population issues, trade tensions with the US, and worrying debt levels. These problems remind many people of Japan in the 1980s, sparking fears that China's economy might slow down like Japan's did. Japan went through what's called Japanification, where economic activity slowed, prices and wages fell, and growth potential declined. Japan never fully bounced back from its lost decade. Back in the 1980s, economists thought Japan would become the world's top economic power, but instead it faced nearly 2 decades of stagnant growth and prices. The big worry is that China might end up like Japan, stuck in stagnation despite its rapid growth since the 1980s. So, will China end up like Japan with decades of stagnant growth? The answer is no, and in this video, we'll show you why China won't go through the Japanese lost decades. But before you keep watching, please subscribe to our channel to show your support. Modern-day China is not 1990 Japan. China's economic growth has followed what's often called the Japanese model. In Japan and other Asian countries, this model has worked great in the short term, bringing rapid growth. But it eventually faces the same issues: massive overinvestment and poorly allocated capital, leading to a tough period of economic adjustment. However, not every country that followed the Japanese model has had to suffer long periods of painful economic adjustment, certainly not like Japan did. Look at the 4 Asian tigers: South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. None of them have faced decades of stagnation. In fact, their per capita GDPs, starting from much lower points, now surpass Japan's when adjusted for purchasing power. South Korea bounced back from the 1997 to 98 Asian financial crisis, reformed its big business groups, and moved up the value chain. Taiwan integrated with mainland China and became the world's top semiconductor producer. Hong Kong has had a tough decade due to underinvestment in housing, but it still outperformed Japan in trade and finance. And Singapore? It's like a rocket ship, with a per capita purchasing power parity GDP now 2.6 times that of Japan's. China might face challenges, but it's not destined to follow Japan's path of prolonged economic stagnation. Aging population, a ticking time bomb? The Asian tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, saw their birth rates drop about 10 years after Japan's did, but the decline was faster and happened at lower income levels. Taiwan's birth rate is now about the same as Japan's, and South Korea's has dropped even lower. Despite immigration, Singapore and Hong Kong haven't fared much better. However, despite these falling birth rates, the Asian tigers didn't face the getting old before getting rich problem. Lower birth rates didn't stop them from catching up to and even surpassing Japan's per capita GDP. While it's still too early to tell the full impact of these population trends, the falling birth rates since the 1980s might have actually allowed 2 generations in these countries to focus on their careers and businesses, driving decades of growth. China's birth rate stayed higher than Japan's and the Asian tigers until recently, when increased university enrollment and the pandemic caused a sharp decline. Still, China's under-20 population is 23.3%, which is higher than the Asian tigers' 16 to 18%, and comparable to the US at 25.3% and Europe at 21.9%. Also, only 14.6% of China's population is 65 or older, which is lower than the developed world's average of 20.5%. Many blame China's slowing growth on its demographics, but the country's ongoing urbanization is helping to balance out the effects of an aging population. Right now, about 66.2% of China's population lives in urban areas, compared to nearly 92% in Japan. Until 2035, China's labor force is expected to shrink only in rural areas, while the urban labor force, more productive than rural, is set to grow. This means aging won't significantly impact growth until urbanization is complete, around 2035. Besides, China has rolled out various policies to tackle population aging and boost birth rates. In 2016, the one-child policy was replaced with a two-child policy, and in 2021, a three-child policy was introduced. The government is also planning to gradually extend the retirement age by 2030 to better utilize the workforce through small, flexible adjustments. All this suggests that China will likely continue to see steady population growth in its cities due to its still low urbanization rate and younger retirement age, even as its overall population declines. The truth behind the fall of Japan. The real reason behind Japan's lost decades is often overlooked: the decline in its human capital. In 2022, Japanese universities produced the same number of science and engineering graduates as they did in 1990, despite a doubling in university enrollment rates. Starting in the mid-90s, as the youth population shrank, Japan's four-year universities began to pull from junior colleges, which had enrolled 14% of post-secondary students in 1995. By 2013, junior college enrollment dropped to 5%, while four-year college enrollment jumped from 31% to 55%. Meanwhile, the percentage of students studying science and engineering fell from 24.5% in 1971 to 18.1% in 2016, with many STEM students shifting to medicine, where enrollment tripled. This shift, combined with a reliance on junior colleges, likely reduced the quality of Japan's scientists and engineers. With college graduates plateauing since the 1970s, Japan is no longer adding significant numbers of educated workers to its workforce. Japan, like other developed countries, is now in a replacement phase, struggling with a dwindling youth population and graduating students of decreasing ability. In contrast, China hasn't hit a plateau in higher education. From single-digit university enrollment rates at the turn of the century, by 2022, China enrolled 34% of its 18-year-olds in four-year degree programs and 29% in junior colleges. In 2015, 41% of Chinese university students majored in science and engineering, more than twice Japan's rate. At the junior college level, 43% of students studied technical fields and 13% healthcare. While China's growth in higher education has driven its industrial and technological advancement, Japan has been regressing in terms of human capital. With declining birth rates and stagnant college enrollment, Japan's educated workforce peaked in the late 1990s, and now we're seeing a long decline. Japanese patent applications have dropped 44% since their 2000 peak. Its share of global patents fell from over 25% to 3% in 2022. Japan's share of global scientific papers dropped from over 9% in the late 1990s to 3.4% in 2020. Japan fell from 2nd to 10th place in publishing the top 1% of cited papers. Similarly, Japan's share of global manufacturing output fell from over 20% in 1995 to 6% in 2021. While China's rise during Japan's decline is well known, South Korea's story is also remarkable. Despite plummeting birth rates, South Korea increased its patent filings and scientific publications, nearly matching Japan with less than half the population. South Korea maintained its manufacturing value-added percentage, even as China gained market share. South Korea's success comes from its fierce commitment to education. For the past 2 decades, South Korea's gross higher education enrollment for 18-year-olds has been around 100%, sometimes even exceeding 100%, meaning they enroll older students to meet workforce needs. Despite increasing education and tapping into junior colleges, Japan couldn't offset its declining youth population by producing higher quality workers. As a result, Japan has fallen significantly in the rankings for science, technology, and industry. With China's economy slowing down, many wonder if it could face a fate similar to Japan in the 1990s. However, unlike Japan's early 1990s crisis, China's property slump isn't being worsened by a stock market crash that severely damaged Japan's banking system. As we've explained in this video, China is not going to be the next Japan. Do you agree with our analysis? Share your thoughts and leave your comments below. If you liked what you watched, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to show your support.